and staff and presenters and members of the Wolfville community. It's lovely to see you. And before we start with the approval of agenda, I would ask the deputy mayor, and just for council, we are working on a new land acknowledgement and a different process, but until we have that finished, we will stay with where we are. So please, deputy mayor.
Good morning. I would like to acknowledge Wolfville is situated in Mi'kma'ki, the ancestral territory of the Mi'kmaq. And as such, ask that we conduct our business with the 7 sacred teachings in mind: truth, honesty, love, courage, respect, wisdom, and humility.
Thank you. We'll ask for approval of the agenda. And before I put that motion on the floor, I would say that we're going to add the King's Point to Point to the agenda. We are only going to deal at most with the operating budget. We do have hard stop at noon, and we have a special council that has to happen before that. And I also want to debrief council on an item. So we'll get as far as we get to, I'm thinking 11:30, and then we will go to other business. So with that in mind, before when you do come to vote, I'll ask Deputy Mayor to move the approval of the agenda.
I would like to move that the agenda be approved as circulated with some modifications.
I'll second that.
Thank you, Councillor Butler. Any comments? Council, all those in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That's passed. We have 2 sets of minutes. Committee of the Whole minutes, February 14th, 2024.
I would like to move that the minutes of the February 14, 2024 Committee of the Whole meeting be approved as circulated and or amended.
Thank you. And the seconder, please. Thank you, Councillor Madeira Boss. Are there any errors or omissions in those minutes? All those in favor of approval of the minutes, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Those are passed. And Special Committee of the Whole budget minutes of February 21st, 2024.
I would like to move that the minutes of the February 21st, 2024 Special Committee of the Whole budget meeting be approved as circulated and or amended.
Thank you. And a seconder, please. Thank you, Councillor McKay. Any errors or omissions? All those in favor, please indicate by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Those are passed. We have 3 presentations today. The first from our Kings County Senior Safety Program, and then we have 2 separate presentations from Acadia. For those who might not be familiar with the process, I've asked if the presenters could try and keep their presentations to 10 minutes or under, and then council will have a chance to ask questions of the presenters. And however long that takes, we'll move on to the next. So Trish, you may go first. No, after the presentation.
Yes, thank you very much. Good morning. Good morning, Your Worship and councillors and staff. Thank you so much for the invitation. I was grateful when Mayor Donovan suggested that I asked to speak. I understand it's been a little while since anyone has presented on our program. So my name is Trish Coleman. I'm the Senior Safety Director of our program, and I have Johanna Clappernet with me this morning as well. Johanna is our treasurer and serves a number of other roles on our board. So she will also be available to answer questions. So I am grateful for a couple of reasons. First of all, as always, to say thank you for the funding that we get and the other supports that we get from our funders and sponsors and our in-kind donations. So we do receive funding from the town of Wolfville, and we are very grateful. We rely totally on grants and donations in order to run our program. So without that, we wouldn't be able to do what we do. And secondly, I like to say that our program is sort of like a hidden treasure. People don't know about us until they need us. So every chance that we get to say a little bit about what we do and how folks can access our service. So we're always very grateful about that. So we focus on safety and security of seniors. And so in that role, we are a bit unique. We fill some gaps. We fill a role that other agencies don't necessarily cover for us. So we focus on crime prevention, safety and security, cyber safety, identity theft, frauds and scams awareness and prevention, elder abuse awareness and prevention, road safety. So that's our main focus. And of course, that encompasses a lot. And when you get to safety and security of seniors, you can imagine in the climate that we're in that also brings us into a lot of areas of need for seniors that we try to address. In the brochure that I passed out, first I should just say a little bit about our structure. We've been in Kings County since 2006. We are a registered not-for-profit, and I report to a volunteer board that oversees our program. So we cover all of Kings County and we serve seniors 55 and up. So in the brochure, you will see our program goals. But I want to highlight, because I know that time is limited, our service that we provide. So the backbone of our program are our home visits, our one-on-one client visits that we do. So I do make home visits. That does make us a bit unique to some agencies because we do go where our seniors need us. In that capacity, primarily my role is that of navigator. So I try to match seniors with the services and programs that are out there for them. Do a lot of government paperwork, a lot of phone calls on behalf of clients. Sometimes we're not a friendly visiting program, but you can imagine that seniors are lonely and isolated, and anyone that comes into their home, it's a privilege to be able to go into their home. But I think in a lot of ways we serve that connection that seniors might be needing. We also have been doing more, I would say, public presentations and educational sessions. So in our educational capacity, we have last year in 2023. So I should also back up and say, I started in this position in January of 2023. The previous coordinator, Michelle Parker, took a leave of absence and she was with Open Arms and she's staying there. So I'm now in this position permanently. So in 2023, we really tried to do a few things while I was not sure if I was going to be staying permanently. So we brought some educational sessions. So we did 2 safety academies, which are 4-week educational sessions with 2 topics a week, focusing on home safety and security and other aspects of the things that we like to teach about. And we did a Living Alone Academy, which was the first time in Kings County. That was a program that I helped to develop when I worked with the municipality of Chester. So same format, 4-week format with 2 speakers each morning, focusing on issues that seniors might need to know when they're faced with being alone. So if they've lost their partner for one reason or another. We did 2 shredding events last year, and our hope is certainly to do more. So free confidential shredding. The shredding truck comes into a community for 3 hours, and that is part of our endeavor to prevent identity theft, which frauds and scams are just becoming, well, I've been using the word epidemic. I'm not sure that that's maybe a bit of a stretch, but honestly, I deal with it every day and it has tragic consequences. So our shredding events are one of the ways that we look to help prevent that so folks can get rid of their confidential documents and hopefully they don't get in the hands of scammers. I've been doing a number of frauds and scams presentations around the county. Right now, I'm doing a series in all of the housing units in Kings County, the seniors housing units. So 14 of those, plus other groups. So I'm available to speak to any group at all about our program, our VAR of Life that we do, our partnerships, and any group that would like to have a presentation on frauds and scams. And we offered last year two driver refresher programs. So over 80 seniors were able to participate in a free day-long in class opportunity. They call it collision prevention. We don't say that we're not accident prevention, but collision prevention. So, and we are always looking for other ways that we can meet those educational needs. So one of the things I'm very excited, I finally, after 14 months of calling and a bit of nagging, have been able to, I think, get a panelist for my driving decisions panel that we're working on. So very important discussion around the issue of when someone might reduce their driving or give up their keys. So we hope to have that in a number of locations around the county this year. So some of those events cost a bit of money. So we're very grateful for the sponsors that we do get for those. And anyone that has space for us where we can come in and put on a pot of coffee and we can do something in the way of public education. We're very much about prevention. And so if we can get ahead of some of these things, I did a presentation not that long ago on frauds and scams in a small rural area of the county. And there was a woman there who'd been scammed out of $100,000. One of my colleagues in another county said that she's been working with someone who's lost even significantly more than that. So it's just very critical that we get out ahead of that and try to prevent that. And then in the, another thing that I say that we like to do, so navigation, education, and advocacy. Every chance I get to be the voice of seniors, I try to do that. I sit on a number of committees. Friday, I'm speaking to 3 Acadia students about what seniors might like. I'm not quite sure what they're going to ask of me. I'm a senior now, so I guess I can speak a little bit to that as well. So every chance that we get to have a politician's ear, a service provider's ear, just to say what I'm seeing on the ground with the needs of seniors. And we do a lot of calls on behalf of seniors, so individual advocacy. In the brochure, you'll see program goals, issues addressed. I don't really need to cover a lot of that. We've talked to, you can read that for yourselves, the things that we do and the things that we cover. Our program is free. And also in the bulletin and our brochure is our funding partners are there. Currently, we're located at the Kentville Police Station, but I know that Michelle had been at the Berwick RCMP detachment, and then at Wolfville, and then at New Minas. So we do work closely with police, and also want to just say too about a referral process. We have a very informal referral. You really just need to call or email me. And we get referrals from just about everybody. Friends, family, neighbors, clients can self-refer. I work with Continuing Care, Caregivers Nova Scotia, the Alzheimer's Society, and Adult Protection, and all of those partners. We get referrals from the MP's office, MLA's offices. So, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Trish. Members of council, do any of you have questions? Councilor Madeira Voss?
Thank you for your presentation. That was wonderful to hear about all the depth and breadth of the services you provide. Very, very important. And I think dealing with some pretty powerful issues like driver's, like, I can't begin. I'm just curious in terms of numbers, because you had mentioned a number in terms of people attending overall in the county. How many people do you believe you serve or have contact with in general?
So if I remember my numbers rightly, we just did our annual report for the Department of Seniors and Long-Term Care. In 2023, we had 199 clients. Currently, I have 67-ish open referrals. Some of those are open because I just haven't had time to go through and make sure that I've answered everyone's questions, and I can certainly move some of those to the closed part, but 67 I counted. Attendance, Johanna, do you remember attendance at our talks? It was 279?
At least 279.
Yeah.
Individuals present in person. And that does not include some of those other things that you do. So yeah, like for example, when we do a shredding event, we don't count how many people actually take advantage of that.
We try to, but the cars roll through, so it's hard to know sometimes. That's right, yeah. So, and I'm happy to speak to small numbers. I do some one-on-one, what I would call fraud counseling with seniors. They've been scammed or they've had a near miss. So, you know, when I'm doing that, it's a home visit. I'm happy to speak to smaller groups. I did a frauds and scams presentation to the retired teachers, and there was 63 people there. So sometimes it's a large group, but numbers don't matter so much as long as we're getting the word out.
Thank you. Deputy Mayor?
Thank you. Trish, I've always felt that King's Senior Safety is an amazing community-based program. It's not like community services. It's local, and that's to be commended. And you were good enough to come to one of the meetings on local homelessness not too long ago. And I just wonder if you could speak to the kind of numbers you're seeing around seniors who are homeless.
Oh, wow. Okay, so I would say on my client list, I probably have 7 or 8 unhoused, which is more than 10%. Even higher would be seniors who are precariously housed or unsafely housed. And I do have a number of seniors who have been recently housed that require support. So we're not a housing agency, so I'm not a housing locator. I do try to match seniors with that service. And I'm not a housing support worker, so it is not supposed to be my role to help a senior learn how to use the bus system again or do that kind of thing. So we are really shorthanded in those roles. So I take on some of those things sometimes that it would be more efficient to match with other service providers. The numbers go up and down. I work with volunteers who are more in tune with what's happening with those that are sleeping rough, and have asked them to make sure that the folks that need my services know about me, because that's the problem is, you know, there are folks out there that wouldn't have any way of knowing what I do. So I work with seniors to apply for housing, and I've been applying and writing support letters on their behalf for support letters for priority access to do with homelessness and unsafe housing and that kind of thing. So I know I've answered a little bit more than just numbers. So the numbers change almost every day. And that's the thing with what I do. And we don't work at a capacity. It's not like we say we will take 50 clients and then you need to sort of, you know, finish some of those before we take more. We do just take what comes in, and sometimes they come in spurts. I might open 5 referrals a day and then not get another new referral the rest of the week. You know, when I do a talk, I tend to get a lot,
Thank you.
you know, in the area. Yeah.
Thank you.
Counselor McKay.
Thank you. Yes, thanks for your presentation. Appreciate it. You said you work with volunteers. How many do you have in your organization? And if, do you need more, and how would someone go about volunteering if they wanted to do so?
Yes, so thank you. My volunteer, it's the board, so we do have capacity. Johanna could speak to that more. We would love to have a volunteer board member from this area. We have 2 from Port Williams, but we don't have any currently from
We have
Wolfville,
someone from Campbell.
Berwick.
2
2.
from Campbell, 3 from Campbell.
2 from Port Williams.
And 2 from Port Williams. So we have, it's a very active volunteer board, but it's a really good board because we have purpose and we have lots to do. So we're always looking for board members. Beyond that, we don't actually have a volunteer base that does stuff within the organization. Our only, our person on the ground is Trish, and we're in the process of being able to add an additional part-time coordinator in very early next fiscal year.
So when I said I have volunteers, what I meant is there are volunteers that I call on all the time, doing a number of things, either formally or informally. So with the homeless, there are volunteers. So the Frugal Moms would be an example of people who are trooping through snowbanks delivering food. I occasionally deliver food, but that really isn't my role. So there would be other opportunities to volunteer. So we have found that seniors need folks to give them rides to things. We don't transport clients. Those people would not be volunteers with us. We do have some other programming that we're getting underway where we'll be looking for some volunteers. And once we have that put together, I'll be putting out announcements and we'll have some other requests for some volunteers. But
Thank you, Trish. I'm very conscious of our time. If
It's a very good question. So
we can have a quick answer as
yeah.
well.
So I just wanted to confirm that Jody was asking about volunteers. So you're the only staff person that's currently doing the work, and you're hiring another part-time person. So right now you're the only staff person doing this work.
that's right.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
We can certainly schedule more time if we want to have a more fulsome chat with.
If anybody has
Trish.
any other questions, you can just call the office.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Trish. And Trish, you're of course welcome to stay for the entire meeting, including the budget discussion, or you don't feel, if you need to get back to your work, feel free to do that as well.
Thank you.
Brian, I have you first on my list. I don't know if it's better for you or Tanya to go first, but you can toss a coin. Okay.
So I hope it's okay that I can present from over here.
Absolutely.
First off, thank you guys so much for having me this morning. Apologies for the somewhat scratchy voice. We've had a couple of exciting volleyball games the last few nights, so one more tonight to go. So why I'm here is, you know, I've been in my role now at Acadia as the athletic director for just over, I guess, 2.5 years now. And I can remember when I first started, probably my 3rd month, I was asked to present to this group at that time with COVID protocols. I did that presentation virtually. And it was around a financial ask for support for the pool, which had been started, I guess, during COVID, so prior to my time. And so, came here or presented virtually with, I would say, not a lot of historical context as to why I was there, but I have a little bit more now, I think. And in that time since then, as most of you at this table are aware, we've had some staffing changes. Personally, I've had 3 different direct reports. My newest, Aaron, you guys are all very familiar with. And so there's been some different conversations since I started till now. I've been part of some, I haven't been part of a lot. Most of the, I would say, relationship between the town and the athletic side of things, or athletics and recreation, was always done through the CAO with the town and with my my direct report, the VP Finance Admin. So again, I was part of some, but not part of all. So that first year here, as I said, I was kind of asked to come and just speak pretty quickly, I would say, on that partnership or that relationship. Obviously there's a larger MOU with the town and the university. The most recent version of that, I know athletics and recreation is not really a part of it. It's kind of a separate entity, to so to speak. And so, the town has been a huge supporter of Acadia Athletics for a number of years. Both, just in being there at events, but also certainly financially and in other ways. And so, I just wanted to quickly, this is a summary of what that financial support looks like right now on an annual basis. And you'll see the bottom. I can't thank you enough. We don't exist, we don't operate, or are able to provide the opportunities for our student athletes, for our community members and fans without tremendous support from the town and from all of our corporate sponsors. So, a huge thank you. As I mentioned, during COVID, there was a financial ask made from the university to the town, as well as to the county, to help support the operation of the pool. Obviously, with COVID rules and procedures in place, that was one area where, things had to change, and it's not cheap to operate a pool. And I know one of the challenges that I heard when I started here was, kind of the lack of data collection and I don't want to say transparency, but to some degree transparency. For me, that is vital. That's absolutely critical and important. And so that's really part of why I'm here, is to share some of the data from this past year. I think it was just under a year ago, I was asked, okay, can we start to collect some information? And I'll be truthful, and I'll go through some of it. Some learnings, one of the methods that we use this year that was recommended, we're looking at changing that for next year, from April 1st onwards. But again, part of it is asking this group as well, as what do you guys want? What is some of the information that we can try and track within our capabilities that you guys would like to see? And then as we go through at the end, I will talk about this year's budget, as well as proposing kind of a way forward, hopefully. Whatever. So I just wanted to put this up there. I know it might be somewhat small. I apologize. So our pool really is open about 95 hours a week, Monday to Sunday night, in terms of the programmed hours. So this is a breakdown of what a typical week from September through till end of March. April, May, June, July, and part of August look different for a variety of reasons, but you'll see the very first one there, we've got roughly 28% of the time per week is allocated for Acadia's varsity swim team. And then most of the rest is for community use groups. I know Smile sometimes gets associated, it's an Acadia program, but the participants are not university students, they are community members. So this is just a rough breakdown, and I think you guys have this presentation. If not, I'm certainly willing to share it
Yes,
with
if
everyone
you
so you
would.
guys can see it. I know it's a little bit small up there, so
I
apologies.
don't believe we have it.
But that you have.
I do not believe we have it.
Okay.
So if you could send it.
Okay, I'll make sure you do. So one of the things that we tried to look at this year was the pool user count. And so my staff reached out to a few different municipalities and pools to see, okay, how are they tracking that? And so what was recommended to them that they decided was what's termed a bather count, and it's what's used by the HRM with their pools. And so you'll see the second point there, what that is essentially they're counting how many people are in the pool every hour. So at 7:30, how many people are in the pool? At 8:30, how many people are in the pool? For me, it's not a perfect system because between 7:30 and 8:30, 10 people may have come in and left and they're not tracked. So it's, as I say, that's a learning from this year that we are looking at. That's certainly changing what that looks like. But to give you an idea of what the numbers look like here, this is a typical week for us. And so again, I'll explain the 8 to 26 as the example. So what that 8 means is that was the peak of one of the 7:30 to 9 o'clock swims in one week. And then next week at that very same swim, that peak could have been 26 people. So there was really a wide variety of in terms of week to week. Pretty consistently for most of these, it's closer to the high end number, but I also wanted to show there are some weeks when those numbers are lower and what those reasons are, not really determined yet. So this is just a quick breakdown of essentially the community use groups. Our swim team's numbers are not in there for the purpose of this presentation, but there's just a quick number. I have there in the bottom the SMILE program, just so you're aware, one participant is always assigned to at least one or two instructors. So that's why the number there can be quite varied depending on who the registrants in that program are. I'll give you an idea of just some of the membership breakdown that we have. And this is full facility membership and then some pool membership. So the way our facility operates right now, as of Friday, we had 1,084 facility memberships. That does not include any students into that number. That is strictly staff, faculty, and community members. So roughly, it's about 598. I put roughly 600 of those people on there when they sign up or when they register in the system live in Wolfville. So roughly 55% of those members are Wolfville residents. You'll see the 3 categories for just pool memberships there. So you can purchase a 1-year individual membership for the pool, which just gets you access to the pool, not the fitness center or anything else. You could do a 1-year family membership or an Aquafit membership. So all 3 of those categories only get you access to the pool. Our other memberships get you access pool, fitness center, and essentially the whole facility. So as I mentioned, one of the, I guess my next slide here is one of the reasons why I'm here is I know that with all the staff changeover that there was no agreement in place for this fiscal year around financial contribution to the pool, but I do know that some was built into the budget. And so this is really part of why I'm here is asking, for this fiscal, for that support from the town. Again, those were conversations between, previous people in their roles, but this is part of why I'm here. And then I think the other piece for me, as I mentioned, is moving forward, looking at, something maybe a little bit longer term, not year to year, but, in a 4 or 5 year type of an agreement. That dollar amount, just so you're aware, is the 75 from the pool and the additional and the 61 that's already in place combined. So it's not an additional ask of any way. It's just combining it into one ask as opposed to having multiple different ones. And what I'd be proposing for this group is a report back to you at 3 different points in the year. One after the April through to the end of August. As I said, that time frame is very different in our world academically because our students aren't on campus. So most of all of the programming in the pool at that time is certainly community-based programming, and then one at the end of each semester, September through to December and January through till end of March. And that's it.
Thank you, Brian. I'll open it to questions from members of council. Councillor Ingham.
Hi, Brian. I guess anytime that we're asked for money, I always like to see some numbers. So
Yep.
when I'm looking at this, where is the operating budget? How much does it cost for the pool to be run? And are there programmings like just looking at, you typically are putting up like the March calendar right now, and I noticed that there's a lot of closures in the pool. Are you having any issues with lifeguarding? Yeah, so, and I do appreciate, I used to coach Acadia and I used to coach the Triton, so I'm well aware of the
Yeah.
pool schedule. In
Yeah.
fact, I've made it up
Yep.
several times.
Yep.
And I'm happy to see that some of the Tritons are feeding into the lifeguarding program. I guess the issue is for students and it doesn't seem to be as much during the year because a lot of the lifeguards you hire are Acadia students. But you're not offering enough hours for somebody to actually make this a full-time job. So what do you propose, like moving forward in the summer to sort of offer more for the lifeguards, more for, the community?
Yeah, so you're completely right. The lifeguard situation, not just here, I mean, everywhere has been interesting. So we've been working with Nova Scotia Life Saving Society to try and figure some of that out. And you'll see there's a number of municipalities offering scholarships and grants for lifeguards coming on board and stuff like that right now. Not this past year, the year before, we had, and I'm not quite accurate on the numbers here, so apologies. Somewhere in the 55 to 60 lifeguards that we knew of on campus that were certified and able to be a lifeguard, and we had 7 that worked for us during the school year. The rest didn't want to your point. They were doing other things. They didn't want the hours, whatever the reasons were. So part of what we're trying to do is make sure. So our swim coach now, we've got him certified so he can teach some of the lifeguarding courses and things like that. The hope and the idea is to put more of those on. We're looking at and going to be doing more swim lessons. And so part of the funding from you guys has been going or will be going to an actual aquatics coordinator position. So someone that will start to oversee that stuff. Prior to me getting here, there was a different structure in place, and then the new swim coach came in and there was a position that was somewhat eliminated really that oversaw that stuff. And that's something that we put back in place this year and are going to expand on that because to your point, the lifeguarding situation is not going to fix itself. So we have to be proactive in that. Are there students on campus right now that we don't know about that could be filling some of those positions? Absolutely. But the summertime, the exam break in December, the exam break in April are absolutely challenges for us lifeguarding wise because they're busy or they're not here. They don't live here year round. So it is something I don't have an answer for you today, other than to say it is something we recognize and we are trying to figure out with the appropriate groups how we can address this.
Thank you. Deputy Mayor, then Councillor Butler.
Thank you. Morning.
Morning.
I was asked by a resident knowing the agenda for today, if there are free public swims, the way there are free public skates at the arena.
Currently, there's not, mainly because of the cost of having lifeguards and other there that we have to have those costs covered. Whereas with the ice, we don't have staff that needs to be there for the free skates. It's really the staff letting someone in at the front. Is it something we could do? Absolutely. It's something we can certainly look at from time to time. I couldn't, without going through the numbers and things like that, I couldn't sit here and say, hey, it's something we could do once a month, once a week or anything like that. But it's certainly something we could look at.
Yeah, for those who have the economic need to not pay. Thank you very much.
Councillor Butler.
Thank you for the presentation. I have 2 questions. One is just a point of clarification. So your very first slide had the 35,000 from the town going towards the fitness center support. In the MOU, it's listed as the Acadia Athletic Complex, and I just want to make sure those are one and the same thing.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
I was thinking fitness center just goes to the gym, but
Yeah.
athletics complex is the building. as a
Correct.
whole.
I took it off the actual invoice, I think that was sent to the
Okay.
town, so that's why I used that.
Um,
But yes, yeah.
And then the only thing I didn't see in the slides was the total cost to operate the pool.
Yeah.
And the revenue generated from memberships and where other supports are coming from. Is that something that can be gotten?
The total cost of the pool, I can certainly come back to you guys with. It's not, the pool itself, like the physical pool is actually operated under our facilities department, which isn't within my department. So I would
Okay.
have to go to my colleague who's in charge of facilities in terms of getting the true number of, from all the chemicals used and all that, like he's responsible
Mhm.
for all of that.
Okay.
So I could certainly ask him to provide that.
Yeah.
And membership wise, again, I can, so that part I can get back to
Okay.
you on that. Yeah.
Just as a sort of, because then at the very end with the 4 and 5 year plan.
Yeah.
If the 75 can drop down to 60, it's just a matter of knowing what the 75 is being used for now. If it can, if it can just drop and more is being put to the athletics complex.
Yeah.
Just that balance.
Why the change, again, for full transparency, is if I look at our athletics complex, a great deal of our memberships and our users use the fitness center more than the pool. And so we're looking at some, we have some very old, outdated equipment in there. So we're looking at replacing equipment on an annual basis. So we've now built in kind of we've now built a schedule of replacement essentially. And so that's why the number for moving forward has slightly increased from the 35 into 50,000 towards the facility as opposed to the full 75 with the pool. So total dollar value hasn't changed. It's just I've reallocated slightly differently because I think, as I said, our numbers and our user groups are certainly, from a community side, are certainly using the fitness center area and the gymnasium and place like that more than the pool.
Okay. Can I ask a follow-up? So if the numbers are going to change, just as you might as well start working on it, we'll probably ask for information about the fitness center, just as we did with the pool.
Correct.
In terms
Yep.
of how much is being used by the public as versus just Acadia athlete.
Thank you. Councillor McKay?
Yeah, thanks, Brian. Just to follow up on Councillor Butler, yeah, and also the gym itself, because I think there's open gym every day, or not every day. Depends on athletics and all that kind of stuff, but how many use that, and could there be more of that as well? Because I know the young people are coming out and using it a little bit now, so that's been a great asset for some of the kids after school.
All right, thank you, Brian. If you
Thank you
could
very much.
send,
I appreciate it.
if you could send us your presentation, that
Yeah.
would be
I
terrific.
know Laura has it. Yeah.
Yes, oh, you
Yeah.
do. Okay,
Yeah.
good.
Thank
Thank
you
you
so
very
much.
much. Thank you. Tanya, I don't know if you want to be there or if you want to be there. Okay. And this is Tanya Colburn with Events Acadia. Brian Finnis, who just sat down, is with Acadia Athletics. I'm sorry, I was too familiar in the introduction. Thank you, Tanya.
Thank you for having me back. I said earlier, you're going to be sick of seeing me, having just been here in January, but I think a quick follow-up to January's session. Wanted to come today and just do a quick recap. And of course, we have the hard part today where we're making financial asks. So we'll do that too. But just to follow up on January with the first impact report that we shared, wanted to just quickly speak to oops, sorry, I gotta get the slideshow going here. Maybe. If you don't mind, yeah, I can't get the mouse to pick up there. Perfect, thank you. So just a quick recap, as you know, in 2022, we launched the new framework with the focus being revenue generation for the university, maximizing potential, meaning maximizing our potential in terms of amenities as well as facility usage. Profile building, of course, always a key component, economic development, which obviously is the broader regional reach, and just that, the regional scope. I think I did mention, in addition to what we're doing on behalf of the university, we have been named as the event attraction arm for Valley Ren, obviously with the town of Wolfville and a number of other municipalities represented. And although that work is in its infancy stages, certainly we've had some success to date, focusing in on that regional approach as opposed to solely and completely the university focus. With that in mind, since April of 2022, as shared in January, we've hosted over 470 events of varying nature, which are shown here. Varsity athletics, of course, is included in this mix for the purposes of comparison here. But you can see, in addition to varsity athletics, there's quite a breakdown. The other category is the one we need to do better at in terms of reporting on, but we do try to ensure that there's some diversity in terms of the offerings, understanding that sport is certainly a primary, but moving more into the cultural pieces as well. That said, excluding varsity sport, and I say that only because Brian makes our numbers look good, with an average of 75 to 80 events, obviously, each year coming naturally from varsity. So just wanted to showcase that without varsity athletics included, our growth has been significant, and we are continuing on the rise with numbers looking even stronger for 2024 and beyond. Accommodations, of course, is a key component of our hosting efforts, but feel it important to showcase the growth there as well. We were sitting at 12,845 room nights for 2023, and that is without any proactive efforts in terms of the accommodations piece. That is changing this year, as I shared earlier. In the new year, we are already reaching out to various provincial organizations, event hosts, and rights holders, et cetera, to ensure that our rooms are filled, and we're very focused on the short stay. So obviously from the regional perspective, the tourism initiatives and other things, wanting to ensure that all know that we are open and ready to welcome guests, understanding that obviously, particularly in the summer months, we do have a shortage of accommodations within Wolfville in particular, but the Valley region in general as well. So all of that to say, with reference to 2024, as you know, the town is a key partner for us in two major events that have been confirmed. The first being Nova Scotia Music Week, just announced last Friday. A couple of updates in that regard. One is to say that the early bird tickets that were available sold out in less than 3 days. So I think that bodes well for what's to come. There's certainly some excitement in the air relative to this event coming to Wolfville. Another, I think I'm allowed to share this now, but Jody has joined us as a co-chair for this event, and we are already in the weeds in terms of solidifying other host committee members and moving forward with execution. Seems like it's a ways off, but it really isn't. So thank you, Jody, for joining us, and very excited to see what is yet to come. And we are going to have an in-person event later in April to ensure that our guests have an opportunity to, and delegates have an opportunity to visit Wolfville prior to the event, and just build some hype from there. That said, as you know, for events like this, there is a bid process and a host fee. The town has kindly committed to half of that, and those dollars consist of the 10,000 in terms of the annual contribution that we're going to speak to relative to the MOU that was pre-existing this year, for both 2023, 24, plus the addition of the 3,000 committed by council, and then the 15,000 in kind. The second is the curling trials, of course. Again, a lot of hype. Host committee is being formed. We are working very closely with all of the curling community members from across the region, and already our volunteer base is very, very strong, which is great. And efforts are underway, but just to say that this one was a bit unique. Of course, we did have to go through the bidding process, but the host fee of 100,000, which would have been charged to us as the bidder, was waived, given the nature of the event and Nova Scotia serving as host. But we are still anticipating execution costs of 200 to 250,000, which Acadia is accountable for, but understanding we do have commitments in principle from a number of parties, the primary being the province, who has committed in principle to 60,000. And then of course the town, although the number has not been named, has committed to us in principle as well for future. And the reason for sharing those outside of simply just a recap is to say that this is the standard, as you know. Most of the major events that we're calling them do require host fees and a bidding process. And unfortunately, we as the university cannot take on those host fees solely and completely on our own, which is part of the reason that we're hoping for a slight increase in our annual contribution from the town, if possible. So that said, before I get to the numbers, a couple of the things we're working on right now for future, we have a few concert events as evidenced by Josh Ramsey and Rhea May. Biff Naked is doing a unique documentary and screening performance that we're tying in with the School of Music. And we're working on bringing to that event and that tour to this region in 2025. We have a couple of conferences, a number of sporting events, as well as Still Timber Sports, which some of you may recall from previous presentations. We put a hold on a bid for that event for 2024, but do hope to bid. Well, we are in the midst actually of bidding again for 2026. But as well, there's a Maritime Broomball bid that has been submitted, as well as Ultimate Masters. And we are actually headed to the Sport Event Congress next week, where we have meetings with 18 national sport organizations. We've had great success at this event before, not just as Acadia, but certainly previously for myself and Nick Sharp, my counterpart, who have been involved with event hosting in previous years. And we do feel very confident that there will be a number of event opportunities coming from that to us, some of which have already been discussed previous. But we'll certainly provide a status update. And those are just the majors. And the reason I say that is we have to be cognizant of the fact that we have a market that could very quickly be saturated, in addition to the fact that we are a university and students are the primary. So displacement needs to be top of mind. So we try to limit our major event hosting to 1 to 3 events per year maximum, and ensuring that that's a mix. So as you know, we've also hosted a number of concert events and other things over the last 18 months. But they are not listed here purely because those are promoter events, which means we don't carry the risk. We're purely a host venue. So those aren't included in here because there's no financial implication for us as a university in those instances. And then of course the summer accommodations. And I share that only because that is a focal point for us moving into 2024 and beyond. So that said, noting some of what's coming and also what's already been committed to, relative to the previous MOU, the commitment, as I mentioned, is $10,000 per year. At the moment, the 10,000 from 2023, 10,000 from 2024, plus the 3, as mentioned earlier, is committed to Nova Scotia Music Week 2024, which means for 2024, we have no additional funds available to us should other bid opportunities become available and or some of those that I mentioned come to life, which is why we're hoping that moving forward, we may be able to look at a slight increase and ideally a 5-year commitment to 30,000 per year, with the permission, of course, to come back if warranted for unique opportunities that we may not have been aware of prior to each year's commitment being fulfilled. And noting as well, as Brian mentioned, that there has been a lack of transparency and reporting in years past. So wanting to ensure that we're committing to what we've been doing of late with biannual updates at a minimum to council, quarterly updates to staff, and ideally town representation on host committees where there is desire and or need to ensure that all is top of mind and very much at the forefront. So that's our ask. But any questions?
Thank you, Tanya. Are there any questions of council, from council? Councillor Palmer.
Thank you. That's quite interesting. First of all, stand up and cheer and go volleyball. That's pretty good. That's pretty exciting. First time you've had any more than 200 people in the stands, I've heard. That's really impressive. Nova Scotia Music Week. Are you gonna ask to host it again? Like, where are you with that?
No, so we've been awarded hosting rights for this November.
Yeah.
And it's a 1-year deal at the moment.
Oh, it is a 1-year deal.
It is. They'll release their bid documentation in the fall for the following or for the upcoming years. And at that time, we can certainly decide whether or not we wish to host again. But at the moment, it's just a 1-year commitment.
It's a big one. I'm glad you got that one. It's good.
We are as well. It's going to be great.
It's gonna be great.
Other members of council? Councillor McKay.
I'll just assume that this is gonna go to the budget process. No questions directly for Tanya, but
Right,
Yes.
I'm
not.
I'm sure we will ask Beth which of these numbers are in the budget. Not now, Beth. but- Don't want to put you on the spot right now, but yes, I'm sure it will come up. Thank you so much.
Thank
And,
you.
yes, congratulations. You've had a couple of big coups in the last few months. Always exciting.
Well, thank you
Thank
for
you.
being a part of it. We literally couldn't have done it without you. So we're excited. It's going to be good.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Tanya. And
Can we
and
get-
again, you are, oh, sorry.
Can we get those slides sent to us as well?
Yeah,
Thank,
there's two sets. Again, welcome to stay for the rest of the morning as we talk about budget, but you're also welcome to leave. I'm sure you have a busy schedule. We now have public input, and I will ask if there are any people in the audience. Are there any people online? No? No. Did you say not anymore?
Not online.
There were, but they've gone. If you wish to address council, please give your name and your street address, whether you live in Wolfville, and you have 3 minutes. I will give you a kind of like this at 2 minutes, and since there appears only to be one, I will let you go for 4 minutes, but it's a hard stop at 4.
Bless you, bless you. I understood I had 10, but now I'm on 4.
Well,
This
we
is
will,
Downsizing really put.
we will blame whoever told you that, but
I'm not blaming you.
very clear in the agenda. It's
Okay.
always
My name is Roger Bolt and I live at 8 DeWitt Close. I'm a resident of the wonderful town of Wolfville. And for those who are not familiar with DeWitt Close with 2 little homes on it, it's runs off Lower Moore and it's 1 block back from the main street on the east end of town. I think, your worship, you should know where.
I
that
walk
is.
by it every day.
That's your neighborhood. Anyway, I have a question this morning and I thank you for the opportunity to ask it. And it's about the storm sewer system in the area of Main Street and Lower Moore and Wilson Drive. I'm gonna stick to my script because I'm tight for time and I want to respect that. Last August, we had a sudden heavy rain squall pass over the town, dumping enough rain to overwhelm the capacity of the storm sewer system. And it resulted in the accumulation of a large amount of surface water at the intersection of Main, Wilson, and Lower Moore. This was not a puddle. Indeed, it was not even a pond. Some of us locals called it a Lake Lower Moore. And it was over knee deep at the maximum. There's some pictures that you want to pass those around just to kind of get a feel of the situation. Thank you. This, those snaps were taken actually sometime after the Lake Lower Moore had peaked. And so anyway, the net result was the water was over knee deep and it closed Highway 1 for over an hour. These pictures were taken after it had begun to drain and receded quite a bit. And you may ask, how did this happen? Where did the water go? The corner property on Lower Moore and Main, the Harris's place, is set well back from the main street, over 100 feet back. So they have a very large front yard, and it was mostly covered in the groundwater. And the
2 minute,
Prop-
2
sorry.
minute warning,
sorry,
2 minute warning,
yeah, you said, I still didn't hear.
2 minutes. So you,
Okay. I'm well along the property next door belongs to the town. It's the pump house lot that regards a out of service pump there. It has a long gravel driveway at service by over 130 feet long, which ends in an embankment, about 15, 20-foot embankment at the back, and our property backs onto it. So, water likes to run downhill. And so what had happened in August was that the stormwater made its own drain down the gravel driveway of the pump house and emptied a good portion of Lake Lower Moore into my backyard, along with a few tons of gravel and silt. So that had formerly been a happy part of the driveway. I was able to watch with alarms the flood waters across the flower beds, the lawn, the patios, and got up within half an inch of the thresholds of our 2 patio doors in the back. And so I was sitting there, and fortunately, unlike Noah, my prayers were answered and the floodwaters stabilized and then eventually started to drop. So my fully finished basement level was saved. Hallelujah. The climate experts tell us that these sudden climate events, extreme events, will be more frequent and stronger as time goes on. So this got me off my couch, and I began to make some inquiries about what the town
Wrap
had
up.
in mind.
Please wrap up.
Okay, my question is this. I had a good consultation with our town engineer, and Alex informed me that we do not have any current plan to augment the sewer system. And so he said quite properly, we need a hydrological study before such plans could be built. I agree with that. So, but here's my question after a long-winded. Do you agree that we should have a plan to make a plan?
Okay, thank you. This is
Specifically,
this
the
is-
funded.
I've
if
got
I could
Mr.
just-
Bolt.
The last sentence then.
One sentence.
Is there a funded project in this year's work program to commission a hydrological study as an antecedent to plans to fix the storm sewer inadequacy?
Thank you.
So this is not the question and answer session. Okay.
Will say that your concerns were shared with staff, and as you've talked to Alex, if Alex wishes to bring something back to council for a decision, that's how a decision would happen. But
Okay,
but
thank
that
you.
was shared with our staff. And is there anybody else for public input? Seeing not, we will move on to committee reports internal. Councillor Ingham, your accessibility report, is there anything you wish to add?
As submitted.
And are there any questions for Councillor Ingham? Thank you, Councillor Ingham. CAO report.
Thank you, Worship, and the council. Certainly, you have within your package an overview of the CAO's report. Certainly indicative of how busy administration has been, both at an operational level and a planning perspective, and certainly can answer any questions. But there's some number of initiatives that were codified in the report from engineering and public works, information technology, and so forth. And certainly I was pleased to see within our IT report in terms of the proactive efforts to kind of protect our infrastructure, recognizing that we have over 200 devices that we rely on to continue our business continuity. There's also reports in there, Your Worship, in relation to compliance and finance and corporate services, and certainly the opportunity to acknowledge Annette Demings on her 34-year career with our organization, and a wonderful member of our staff who's we all depend on her. So I have within the report, if there's any questions, I can certainly answer those, or our staff can.
Thank you. Rob, are there any questions, Councillor McKay?
Thank you. Question on Willow Park. It says it will be off limits until summertime, so I'm guessing that would be August. And if we get the snow we are planned to get on Thursday, that is one of the most popular sledding places in town. And it is fenced. So curious about the safety of it now and going into the summertime, and how much it will be used, and what will be the communication out to the public on that.
As of right now, the fenced off area would be off limits to the public. Anything outside of the fenced off area is still considered safe. If there was any concern about public safety, the contractor would ask me if they could increase the fenced area, and that hasn't been the case. So as far as when that fence will be removed, it's likely that that won't be removed until substantial completion of the building at the end of July.
Just from a safety perspective, if we get a whole bunch of snow, we might want to flag that fence, because kids will slide.
Good idea.
I have done it. You can slide a long way on that hill. And it would, crashing into it would not be that much fun.
Thank you. Good point. Councillor Butler?
Just to follow up on that, if we're questioned in terms of the summer season coming, I know it just says the splash pad won't open until the later part of the summer, but things like the Magic Winery bus, Mud Creek Days, if we're questioned early on specific events that used to happen in that space, is there any update for those kind of things, just so we're prepared?
Through Mayor Donovan to Councillor Butler, staff have been working on contingency plans for everybody who will be impacted by this period of construction. So some of it will rely on some flexibility, kind of depending on how quickly the project goes. But we look forward to coming back to council very soon with a full kind of rollout of where kind of those key elements will be happening. And once we've communicated with council, we will happily communicate with the public.
Thank you.
Thank you. Other comments? Thank you for your
I have
report.
another-
Oh,
I have another
sorry.
Question. I have a question because I've had comments to me from the public on the coming in on the south side where we put rumble strips. That they're on one side of the street and people are, instead of actually staying on their side, they're just missing the rumble strips and going to the other side of the street. So that clearly is not safe either. So curious, why could they be on both sides, or should they? I'm sure there's a reason why they're only on one side, but just as for knowledge sake, that has come to me a number of times from the public.
I can comment on that. I mean, I can't comment on human behavior and what goes through people's heads when they go around things like that, but the rumble strips are in place on the northbound lanes for northbound traffic only.
Be careful then.
Good point. Anyone else on council? All right, thank you. That brings us to our staff report, and we are going to, I guess, Director Lake, if you would come up and just kind of give us an overview of the leading up to the motion for Devour, and then we will move into the fun part, the budget. Right? Okay, sure.
Okay, thank you, Mayor and Council. And I'm going to, this shouldn't take very long, but I just want to go through a few points. And then I was actually going to invite Vincent and Hartog up here with me just to go through a couple of the images. So we're not trying to hand them the microphone, if that is okay with Council, Chair. Okay, so this is coming from a one-time capital ask that was previously approved. And what this report basically outlines is the two specific projects that we were funding here, so $50,000 each. The one project was for a universal bathroom, publicly accessible bathroom, and you'll read the standards in there that were outlined, and also a large deck or patio, publicly accessible on the north side of the building. So we'll show some images of those. I just want to touch on a couple points that were in the report. So we've been working on this for a few years to move this forward, and some of the pieces, particularly with the deck, are also reliant on our flood risk work and having some more certainty and taking the time to understand that and unpack that with the design team that Devour has. So we've been working through that. We do have infrastructure in that area. So again, there's been quite a level of detailed diligence there, locating those. We've had some of Alex's staff on site, making sure that things are going to work. Again, working with Devour's design team. And then in the bigger picture, we do lease the rail line. And so there's a number of public improvements that we're making along the rail line. Devour is just one of them. So I've been working with that owner just on amending our lease. It's not really a complicated piece, but there needs to be acknowledgement of what we're doing on the line from both parties. So that's all of those pieces have taken time, which has contributed to coming back for this ask. And the essence of it is really just we're changing the dates, the completion dates. But I also thought this would be a good opportunity just for council to ask some questions of the Devour team. So Michael and Leah and Vincent are all here. And I'd spoken with the mayor earlier, just if we could give them an opportunity to answer some questions, I think everyone can leave here and feel good about the motions, hopefully. So yeah, I'm just going to go down to these images to show what these projects are looking like. And I just thought, Vincent, if you're willing, we can talk through a little bit of this, or we could just answer questions. I need you to be, we can either pass them a microphone, just in terms of making.
I'm wondering if we could keep the questions to Vincent,
Sure.
if
Yeah.
that's possible.
Yeah, Vincent, you could just sit right up here. So I can just go through what we've included here. So this is looking from Waterfront Park at the proposed project, and certainly a really big focus of this has been public access and making it very obvious that this is a public amenity. And so Vincent and I and some others have been discussing that aspect specifically. And so showing the public benefit here, I think, is really important. And going back a number of years, that's been the focus of these discussions. So that is one view that I can go back to and Vincent can speak to. This is looking to the west. So this mass over here is Railtown.
I was wondering what that was.
Yeah.
I got a new
Surprise! Yes. Well, it could be Vincent's vision of the future for that area. I'm not sure. So this is, again, just showcasing the interface between the trail and this patio. And I can, you could make comments as we go.
So you're seeing in the foreground, there's screening of mechanical equipment that will go on that east end of the building. The covered area is intended as a service, flexible service space that can service the events that happen on the deck. I just want to point out, the staircases are wide, trying to promote the ability of people to gather, use them as seating as well. And at each of the entrance, the staircase and the ramp, there's intent for signage to promote and so people recognize that it is public space.
Maybe you can just speak a little bit to this as well.
And the area where you see kind of the tables and canopies, the intended design there, that will double as a stage area. So I'll show it. And you see a later version
there's this stage.
when it converts to a stage. So that area, it's kind of a day-to-day basis, is open for tables and just casual activity, and then it converts to a stage where the guardrails would be removable for events. Yeah.
So yeah, I just thought it was important that Vincent's here for questions more than anything. I'll just say that we did include the floor layout for the universal washroom if there's any discussion that's warranted on that as well. And yeah, I think that's all from.
So the change is really the timing.
It's only the timing. Yeah.
And I also notice I don't see the hammocks in, so. We need to get the hammocks in the kitchen. Okay,
The question?
yes, that you're,
Okay.
I just
Okay.
checking, you're done your presentation? I'll
Yes,
open it
yes,
to
I
council.
am.
Yes, Councillor McKay.
Great. I just have two small ones, actually. Where is the washroom inside the building?
So, well, if you're familiar with the building, when you go in the main entrance, it's sort of
Where
in
is
front
it?
of you, just to the right.
So
It's basically
inside.
right inside the main entrance. There are two public washrooms there now that were used when it was Pete's. That's the zone that'll be converted into the universal washroom.
Perfect, thank you. And just maybe it's an operational question, just on the where there are seating on the deck, is that they look like removable tables and stuff because you'll have events and things on there, but so will Devour Space be staff, so those will come in and out in the evenings, or are they going to stay there all the time? I imagine not.
It's probably more a question for Devour's operational staff.
It's curiosity more than an absolute need to this decision. I'll ask.
I don't know who went on first. I did. You did. Okay, so Councillor Ling.
To be fair.
No.
Thank you for that. I will say the renderings really do look amazing. And I do understand the work that we have to do on the flood risk and the rail line, et cetera. Can you tell me if the interior work that's going on now, does that have any impact on that timeline for the outside? And what is currently going on the inside right now?
So bidding has been completed and we're in the process of, I guess we could call it a value engineering process before work is to start. Actually eminently, we're just kind of dotting the i's, crossing the t's on the subtrade contracts. So we're expecting work to start very shortly on kind of the next phase. This has been a multi-phase project. We're on to phase 4 this year.
Councillor Palmer?
Well, it's a good segue into my question. So the timing for this, there's nothing else going to get in the way. We think this is going to be like the design's kind of finalized, the timeline's looking good. We're gonna actually build this and have it for October. Are we optimistic? And we're
That's
gonna
the
have it for
goal.
October?
That's the goal.
Yeah.
Anything else? All right.
Sorry, can I just comment, lead up? So I guess the comment leading from Ian was, last year you came to council and asked for money for the free concerts that you're putting on. Is your hope that this stage will be complete for the concerts coming at the next Devour? It is, okay.
Being 2024.
This year.
The next. All the very best. Any other questions from council? We do have a motion. Would somebody like to put that motion? Councillor Palmer, you had your light on
Oh,
first.
sorry, I don't have it right in front of me. I would like to move that council approve the attached MOU amendment and direct the CAO to sign and execute this amendment along with forthcoming enabling documents, agreement detailing the scope of work, sewer line for the deck and amended rail line lease.
That probably said committee of the whole, move it to council.
That's the small print.
Yes,
Oh, the committee of the whole. Okay.
Is that what
sorry.
you're gonna say?
That's-
yes, and I'll second it.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Councillor McKay. So committee of the whole is, and we will have a special council at the end of this morning to deal with that. Doesn't deal with that item. It actually deals with Alex's item. So we do have special council. Any comments from council? Questions? Not the question, but comments or questions? Okay, question. All those in favor, please indicate by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, and that is passed unanimously. Thank you. All right, I have had a request for a very quick break. We have, because I'm very sensitive that at least one person has a hard 12 end. So if we could just keep it to 5 minutes and come right back. Please, thank you. So we're 5 minutes.
It's my engine.
Okay. Are we good? Are we back? So welcome, Beth, for your first presentation to us. If you, you can take it away. My understanding, just to confirm, it's almost 10 o'clock. Wherever we are at 11:30, we're going to go into, I believe, still special counsel to deal with. And here I'm a little confused, so I'll just, we are not dealing with capital, but I understand that the roof items for the Welcome Center are capital. When I went back and forth with Rob last night, we are going to deal with those, so. I don't know how that happens because it's capital.
Okay. Well, thank you. I'm excited. We've
And
been
just to finish that, so wherever we are at 11:30, we will break. We will do a special council, which should be very quick. And then I would like council, members of council, the interim CAO and Barb Shaw, if you could stay as well, and Laura, for a 15-minute, and I know Mike has to get going and maybe some of the rest of you do. So take it away.
Thank you, Mayor. So, going to shake off everything that's happened prior to my coming. And we're starting fresh. So this is version 3 of the operating budget. At the last cow, we weren't able to look at some of the numbers, the February 21st cow. There were changes made in that version that we're carrying forward through this version. We're going to spend the majority of the time going through the P&L or the operating statement to get council comfortable with what changes have been made. And stop me if there's questions during that review. Okay?
P&L is profit and loss.
P&L, yes, I'm sorry. There will be a number of acronyms that I might
Yeah,
use.
guilt. What's guilt? I didn't know what that was either.
Guilt? I know what that is.
Well, no.
It's very interesting, if I can make a comment. Coming into the Director of Finance role, the number of acronyms are overwhelming. And I'm always asking Jenny or one of my colleagues, what does that one mean? What does that one mean? So
just us.
if I have one on you, I maybe get a little bit of a coup. So profit and loss statement is a P&L, known as an income statement, known as an operating statement. They're all interchangeable, mean basically the same thing. It's what you're doing in a fiscal year and to manage your operations and your facilities and your staffing. So what we are going to try to accomplish this morning, we want to take council through the operating budget version 1, which was presented in January, to 2 to 3. What you will see in this package is going to be version 1 versus version 3. This will be coming in future slides. We'll talk a little bit about the service levels. I know that had been mentioned to me by Rob, the CAO, ensuring that it was something that was covered so that we knew exactly what the tax rate was in the package and what type of initiatives or dollar value are we still going to be executing for the town in order to absorb the costs that we've saved in contract services. Then we're going to talk about tax rates, the impact on both the residential and commercial tax rates from version 1 to this particular version. We've got some staffing assumptions because again, this was another question that came up and we want to ensure that council is aware of where the staffing levels are and what's been included in this operating budget and what has not. Lastly, Devin's going to do a presentation on the Housing Accelerator Fund. It was something that came on the last February 21st COW just prior to that meeting. So we've got some additional information that we can share with council. The information related to the Housing Accelerator Fund, the expenses and the grant money is not in the operating budget. It should be offset by one another. Once you have an opportunity to review that with Devin, then we'll have a further discussion on if there's any surplus and what that surplus potentially could be used for. Good?
Beth, if I could ask one question, because I'm still a little not sure about the items related to the roof, because I think council said they wanted to have more discussion before it goes into council at 11:30 for a final vote. So where does that come on the agenda?
So the roof is actually a component of the capital budget.
I know,
It was
that's what,
originally at the $680,000. We have adjusted it up to $720,000. So there's a place marker for the additional $40,000.
I don't know if I'm making sense here, but my question is that since we're not talking capital today, but we understand that Alex needs direction today. So we are going to have that discussion, even though it is a capital. I don't know how we're going to do that. Rob, do you have a thought?
Thank you, Your Worship. No, it's a legitimate question. And actually Beth and I discussed this yesterday when it was first contemplated that we would be meeting today with council. At the time, we were contemplating both presenting operating as well as capital budget. And so they were going to be interwoven, and we thought it would be highly challenging for council to have a special council meeting to discuss those items for the VIC. If council's obvious question is, what would our budget look like in the event that council so chose to support those two undertakings? So as a contingency, as Beth said, we put a placeholder in the capital budget so that, and certainly when this comes up, Beth can speak more to it, but in terms of adjusted the upset limit to the project, and then would be then building that into the long-term capital budget that would come back before council at a later date. So I'll let Beth can speak to the fact that it's on its surface is not cost prohibitive or going to be so problematic to the capital budget deliberations that it would preclude council from making a decision today. But the obvious question would be is if council had the deliberations this morning about the project and then we didn't build it in, the next question would be, how will this impact our capital budget? And while council needs to benefit from looking at that broader capital budget, at this point, it's important to know that a placeholder has been built in there, and whatever subsequent decisions are made, it would be informed by council's decision at that time. So again, I understand the confusion because when we first looked at this, it was going to be the broader operating and capital. And when I looked at the feedback from council and the desire to have a more granular discussion here at the budget, the recommendation yesterday was let's break this down and do operating today only. And then certainly in the fullness of time, the capital budget as it's presented, you'll see how that's built into it. But certainly there was nothing in there that as a result of this ask that would make the capital budget unworkable.
I have two questions then. One to council, without the opportunity to have a fulsome discussion this morning, are you uncomfortable going into a special council? And the question for Alex, if we do not have that discussion this morning, does that put you behind the eight ball? If we delayed that decision until we've discussed the capital budget?
The contractor has indicated to me that they could have a decision by the end of next week and not lose any time on their schedule.
But I am going to suggest to council, we need to set another time for a capital budget meeting. Should we have that discussion and hope that we do that within the next 10 days? Councillor McKay?
So I think I'm hearing you, Mayor Donovan, saying, are we discussing this at committee of the whole this morning? Because typically we do that first and then go to council. So if the answer is no, and we're only discussing it at council, do we want to do that?
That's basically.
Okay. So
So we need to schedule another capital budget meeting. And I'm going to suggest that we try and do that within the next 10 days, after which we could have a special council to deal with that item, and that would still fall into the timeline that works for the contractor. Am I both understanding that correctly, and how does council feel about that?
if it's not going to delay the process, I like to see the whole capital budget as one thing. And because there are some items that went from operating to capital. So I think those two need to be discussed in its fulsome and to see how those are going to be funded. So for me, I'd like to see it as a whole package if Alex is okay with. And if we can get it done in the next 10 days. That's my comfort level, but certainly everyone else.
Makes sense. Councillor Palmer?
Well, I guess the assumption is that if we're gonna wait for the discussion for the capital budget, that we're actually gonna approve the steel roof, that we're not gonna
We're not doing that. We would
Yeah.
not be doing that today. We
Yeah,
would do
but
that.
that's the
within-
assumption that we're gonna spend more money as opposed to not spend more money.
I'm I'm seeing some nods that we want to wait for the fulsome capital discussion and then we would vote on that. Am I? Yeah, okay. All right. My apologies for that, but that will mean we will not have a special council, but we'll still try and go till 11:30. But we have a little bit of wiggle room now.
That sounds good. So on the next slide, I think this is something that's very positive. We are now in a surplus position for the operating statement.
Either miracle work.
No, a lot of the work was done even prior to my coming. This
20
wasn't
For
completely
this current fiscal year?
Yes,
Yes.
sorry, the
For
future fiscal
future
year.
fiscal year.
The future, so the budgeted fiscal year. So we had originally at COW, January 18th, the presentation by my predecessor, Department Head, Director McLean, was a deficit of $249,800. Obviously, a budget is a moving target until you finalize it and you can actually approve it. So there were a number of items that have come through during the budgetary process that have proven to
Good
be
job.
that have proven to be beneficial, and we'll talk to that a little bit more in depth in the coming slide deck. The presentation in January, it showed revenues of $14.8 million. We have a slight increase in revenues. We're up to 14.952, almost $15 million. That will be again something that we'll look at in the next slide. This is the slide we're going to study. This is the slide we're going to try to answer everyone's questions on and ensure that council is comfortable as far as where the changes have been made and why they've been made. Is that large enough for everybody to see? Okay, so are they? Lori, are you able to do that? It'll do this page, yeah. Okay, let me just move it over. Can we see it really well? Okay, let's do just a tiny smidgen. Okay. So in the center column, you'll see that the version 1 was the presentation in January COW. Then and I'm going to move my little picture of video camera over here. Good. So the column here that my cursor's on, this is what was presented in January. So we had a total of $14,873,000 in revenues. Version 2 were higher by $78,600. $78,800 comes from the change in the tax rate. We'll discuss that a little bit further. We've taken off $200 in land lease because it's something that when my colleagues and I had met with the former director of finance, it was something we had never really collected, and we'd only collected maybe once in the last 5 years. We didn't feel it was something that we had any commitment that we would receive. So let's take it out. Let's be conservative and let's not overstate. So the net impact to your top line of revenues is $78,600, principally all related to the change in the tax rate. Then we step into our expenses.
Sorry, change in tax rate or change in taxes?
The change in the tax rate to the residential commercial properties.
To the assessment values or the rate?
The rate.
So the rate went up from version 1.
So
to
version
3?
version 1, the rate was presented at a deduction of 2.2 cents for both residential and commercial.
Yeah.
At the end of the January COW meeting, it was asked from council to put into consideration a reduction in that reduction by 1.25 cents, which would bring the net change to the tax rates to a 0.95 of a cent per assessed $100. Does that make sense? So we went from 2.2 down to 0.95. So there was obviously more revenue generated. If we had left it, we decided to, or council asked for consideration to change it. And this is the net impact. So this is the net change of 1.25 cents in both commercial and residential tax rates. There was no change in the assessment values of any of the properties, only in the tax rate. Am I using the proper terminology when I say tax rate? Okay. Then when we step into expenses, we're looking at changes in subcategories of expenditures, ranging from salaries down to partners' contributions. We have some nuances changing from increasing. So if you look at the far column on the right, anything that's not in brackets is an increase in expenditure. Anything that is in a bracket means it's a reduction of an expenditure. When we go line by line, salaries and wages, there's an increase of $43,300. Subsequent benefits, an increase of $8,500. Professional development, an increase of $3,200. Insurances, the initial estimate in version 1 was simply actual insurance costs with an 8% increase. We have since received the actual renewal document from our carrier. These numbers in version 3 are the real numbers. This is what we are going to be charged for 24-25. Okay. It's a really nice difference. And that's including, just for a note, because I'm sure we'll talk about it at some point, or council will talk about it. It also has the inclusion of cybersecurity, which is something that is new. So there's about $12,000 in there for cybersecurity liability insurance. Okay. The next one is operational equipment and supplies. The net change is $2,400. Principally, that change comes from just a small reduction in on roads and streets for salt consumption. The next line is project and program expenditures. There's been a bit of a flip here. You've got an increase in expenditures in project and program. There's a subsequent marriage of $30,000, which has been taken from contract services and just given to the project and program from soups and salads. Correct name? Soups and sides. Soups and sides. So the net effect is a nil for the $30,000. But it's something that we wanted to note simply because it's categorized separately in the operating statement. The next is contract services. It's a larger one, and I need to pull my docs up here. The principal change in that comes from the RCMP. So the policing service, with the change in the policing contract, we have an estimated savings of about $236,000. Again, $30,000 taken out from soup and sides. It reduces that down to around the $206,000 range. And then we've got small little ins and outs related to additional expenses such as recruitment for the CAO, some software, some additional governance expenses, netting contract service to be lowered by $191,100. So it's really good news. Grants to organizations, there's an increase in $10,000, and that's actually for Acadia events. The funding in place for this year, this coming fiscal, will be $20,000 for Acadia events. There's other monies in there that haven't changed, but this was bumped up by $10,000 from version 1 to version 3.
Good question. Does that figure incorporate any of the asks or potential asks that we heard about this morning?
It does. It doesn't include all of it. So the ask this morning was $30,000 plus the ability for one time. They stated in their slide presentation that our normal commitment is $10,000 plus $3,000 for the Music Nova Scotia. Thank you. Music Week, that's the name I was looking for. Jenny and I haven't found the $3,000, so perhaps it's something that we need some time to dig into. We normally do have the $10,000. This year it's at $20,000. So of the $30,000 ask, we're $10,000 shy.
Okay, we should need to put a pin in that and understand their ask, like more specifically, what are those asked for? Councillor McKay, you look quizzical.
Yeah, because the 10 was because we did not give the 10 2 years ago, then we gave the 10 from this year, and then we made a motion to add the 3 in December, I'll say December, I don't know, somewhere between there. So we made a motion to add that 3 and support it, because we did it at the fire hall. It was January. Was it? Well, it was early.
Fire hall was when we went to, when Aaron and I weren't there, because we
You
were
were
at the
there for
fire-
that one,
for that
but yes,
one,
it was
then
it
that's
was a
the day we
nighttime
left,
one.
So
So
that
we-
was November.
Right. So that's where that came from. I guess, yeah, I'm still confused on what is in. Are there, I guess maybe I need to stop for a second and say, are there slides that support the changes? Like details, because I'd like to see what's in the salary and wages, what actually made up, I mean, it says 191.1, but what, I'd like to see the details of what those are. You said 4 or 5 things, so I'm just wondering what.
Yeah,
is
I'm
there a
gonna
process after
suggest
this?
that if Beth can just get to the bottom of this slide and then was gonna open it up for questions on any of those line items. So when you're finished that slide,
Sure.
Beth?
So then after grants to organizations, there's an additional $12,800 for partner contributions, netting the change in expenditures for a reduction of $98,000. Overall, in addition to a transfer from reserves for funding of two of the operating programs, there was a change in operating activities to the positive of $257,400.
So, sorry.
To answer Councillor McKay's question, we have the detail, we don't have it in a slide.
Okay.
We can
But we-
present it in a slide and
Well, maybe if members of council can ask you their questions, if you have the answers, that would, and we'll get it in the minutes.
absolutely.
Councillor McKay, you want to go first, or do you want Ian? All right, Councillor Palmer.
Well, the question I would have for the grants to organizations, did the AVTC get included in that? No,
For the-
which we haven't got an ask from them yet, Jody or Councillor McKay.
ATV, the Annapolis Valley Trails Coalition, that is included. It will be a conversation when we talk about capital budgeting and the reserves. So it's actually part of the operating reserve funding, not yet in the operating budget. So in the IR package, in the capital presentation, it shows you the CIP and the funding. There's $308,000 of funding. $10,000 of that is for the Trails Coalition. There is $25,000 of that for the Curling Club. There is $50,000 of that for Randall House.
Okay, so those are, we're not talking about those today, even though they do come out of operating reserves. So,
Okay, sorry, Beth, you said capital, they're not part of the capital.
So when Director McLean would present the capital budget, he'd present the reserves. So in following that presentation, the capital funding and the operating reserves were presented at the
Yeah,
same
okay.
time. And hence why that would be discussed at the next.
That's true. That's true. So those items, Councillor McKay, we will discuss when we talk about capital, even though I know, but they are
That doesn't
kind of,
make sense. They're part of operating reserves. If we're gonna make if we're gonna do the curling club, Randall House, I'll say KPBT, the Trails Coalition that asks for extra money, those are coming out of operating reserves, not capital reserves.
Correct.
yes, we're just going to do
not
operating
gonna-
reserves when we do the capital discussion.
Okay.
Okay.
You're okay.
Well, I guess, and my second question, then, so there was 2 asks. One is our normal Annapolis Valley Trails Coalition funding, which I think is, and Jenny can correct me if I'm wrong, $25-ish $100. But we asked during the budget for an extra 5. Is that in there? That was discussed as part of our budgeting discussion. I don't even know when now, they're all blurring together, but earlier. So the extra 5, is that in the budget or just the normal?
It's not
25?
in the operating budget.
Thank
just
you.
the normal.
Okay.
Okay. But,
Yeah, that's thinking.
okay. So items related to operating reserve, we will discuss within the next 10 days. And see where we are on that. Other questions on any of these items under either, well, probably under expenses? Counselor Butler?
I do. Can you just go through the insurance line again? I know that you had said in version 1, there was a built-in 8% increase. That I'm assuming was just an assumption there would be because everything's going up. But it didn't actually, it just stayed the same as previous years. There was no 8% increase or no increase or.
There was a slight increase, so the budget in version 1 had $278,680 as an estimate for liability insurance.
Okay.
The actual came in at $266,524.
Okay.
So that's a savings of approximately, that's inclusive of cybersecurity. That's a savings of approximately $17,900.
Okay. Just thank you.
We had, with the prior insurance, we had $279, plus we had an additional $7,000 in for an estimate for cybersecurity. When we received the final bills, the net difference is $18,000 less than what we'd estimated.
I think last year we were around, was it 235 or
240, I think.
240? Counselor McKay?
So our forecast for the end of the year is 229,000 basically. So that, from that to 251 is more than a 9% increase, is it not? Or an 8%? Did you say there's an 8% increase?
Yes,
The
Director.
next page down on our package, it's actually 8% would be 18. Yeah, it's roughly takes us to the 250 mark, but it's about 18%, not 8, I think. Because most of the organizations we've been dealing with, and Mayor, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but King's Transit and Valley Waste, they've been saying pretty much 25% increases in insurance across the board. You remember that? Stuck in my head. So I'm just curious, that was a shock to me when I was hearing everybody else's go up so high that ours then went down. I mean, it increased from this year though, so perhaps that's where the confusion
Yes,
is.
I think there was this year plus 8%, and that 8% turned out to be somewhat too high. Maybe if it had, so we're like maybe at 6%, 6.4, I think you said.
In all fairness, every number that was in the budget presented in January, this is day 14. For my current role, my understanding of the changes, many of them were made prior to my coming to the town. In asking and getting answers, my question was, why was insurance changed? What happened to liability? Did it go to vehicles? Where did it go exactly? My understanding, the response I received was, it was an estimate based on actual, estimated an additional 8%. The actual bill came in, which I've seen and have approved, and I know what the actual bill is. I don't have the romantic relationship yet with the numbers, which I will eventually have, to be able to spew everything off the top of my head. But trust in me that I will have that in a very short period of time. So I ask your understanding that some of the original estimated numbers, I'm not going to spend a great amount of time to go back and ensure what the estimate was. What I'm going to do to utilize my time properly is to ensure that what is in the current budget, that there's backup for it, that there's concrete evidence of it, and it's something that, should we be asked, we can prove those numbers, not necessarily going back and trying to prove numbers of my predecessor. Is that fair?
You're doing
No,
great. You're
that's
doing
very
great.
good. Well,
Day 14. Counselor Palmer.
I just want to be clear on the salary and wages. So you've got so that number, the version 1 number wouldn't have included Rob as an interim, and it would not have included Aaron, or the search, I don't think, would it, or did it?
It doesn't, that didn't. The numbers related to, some of those were changes made prior to Aaron, the previous CAO leaving. So there's a couple staff positions that had been promoted to managers, and the 2 or 3. The 2 for sure. Was your promotion? And an increase. And then there's additional honorariums. And let me just look at the numbers here so I keep wanting to use that mouse on this laptop and it doesn't work and it's bothering me.
And it would have included Aaron because that was there, but now we're not paying Aaron, but we are, so it's kind of a.
Yeah.
in
So,
it.
so there's been a number of changes. There's been 2 general admin, 2 positions changed, which I believe was an in-camera decision by council.
Yeah.
Then there was small increases to a finance role, plus additional hours given to a finance admin role. There also was a buffer that Director McLean had put in there of about $6,800, which we've removed because we have the actual amounts. And this was again related to the admin changes. In addition to that, we have honorariums that were asked of an additional for 2 individuals, which totals $10,000. There was the working papers for the fire department. There was a $2,000 correction related to salaries and wages. That's been taken out. And then there was a slight increase in merit for the planning department, just when we were going through the salary numbers to ensure when we do the increases for the annual salary increases that we were ensuring whether or not the merits were there, just doing our due diligence to check the numbers. And we noted there was a slight increase that hadn't been put in the first version that we wanted to put into version 3. Okay.
Okay,
And-
sorry, interrupted, but like, where is the search? Is that in that line? Like we're gonna pay nice Cambridge, whatever, yeah,
Right.
whatever their name is.
The
We're gonna pay them.
contracted services probably.
Oh, contracted services next.
No, well, where is that search? Where,
CAO.
The CAO search. Oh, the CAO search, sorry. The actual CAO search is under contracted services. And it's,
no, that's great, thank you.
yeah, so it's part of that recoup of the 191. So RCMP is 235,700. We're reporting 191. The additional 37,500 for the recruitment is what's making that difference principally. Does that make sense?
No, that's perfect. I just.
Okay.
Other questions? Beth, if I could just confirm what I understood you to say in salary and wages, the amount in there reflects current staff changes, increases, honorariums, whatever. It does not include, because we've heard, I don't know that they're rumors, but I understand that there was some discussion about a new staff position in Public Works and of course the accelerator position. Those positions are not in there. So how will those, if they do come, where do they fall?
Okay.
Because I would think council would have to approve those new FTEs anyways.
Absolutely. Part of that Devin's going to get to when he talks about the Housing Accelerated Program, because there is a position that has been budgeted in that particular program. So that's one full-time equivalent that council's heard about, and that will be something that will be presented to council. And I know Devin and Rob have been in conversation with that. Secondarily to that, when you were asking about Public Works, there is monies put into the capital budget. And partly the reason why we're not reviewing the capital budget at this meeting is there were a number of changes in the January COW that, excuse me, let me back up. In the January COW, as it was presented, there had been a number of changes that weren't collected. However, there were a number of changes by some of the department heads that had been put into SharePoint and just not communicated through the town staff. In going to version 2, it was made aware that there's a number of those changes. How do we address them? One of those particular changes is a staffing position in Public Works for a new senior planner, not senior planner, for a project manager. Thank you. In year 1, if you recall from the IR document, there's $101,000 in there that's been capitalized. Rob and Alex and I met yesterday to have a conversation on that exact capital plan. And that will be something that we'll update prior to, within the next 10 days.
So maybe council, because we were here and neither you or Rob. So my recollection, and it could be wrong, was that when Tim Bowder was here, Alex's salary was capitalized or came out of the capital budget. Tim left, Alex moved up to that, which is in the regular budget. Jeremy and or Chris were hired, which was not in the capital, was or wasn't, I don't know. A position that we had because it was Alex, but not one that was in the operating budget. So now that position has been moved into the operating budget. So there is an FTE in the operating budget that wasn't in the operating budget 4 years ago, Jody. And then we're gonna get a request for another one that will be in the capital budget. So did this council ever approve the movement of, I don't know if it's Jeremy or Chris, out of, or that second position, out of the capital budget into the operating budget? I am assuming those two positions or three are in there. And that's what I'm following the breadcrumbs, and I don't remember us having that discussion.
And I can't speak
Okay.
to whether.
So maybe we could
put
put that in the parking lot and
Yeah.
get some
I
information.
think we did, Mayor Donovan. I
Did
think
we?
when
Okay.
Jeremy's job came up, I think we did have a discussion on posting and hiring that position with Aaron, the CEO at the time. If my memory serves me correctly.
Okay, so that position came out of capital,
Capital.
that being
Yeah.
Alex before. So we did that last year or the year before. Okay. Alex.
The manager of Public Works is an operational position. I don't think that position was ever funded out of the capital budget. The municipal technician, which is Chris, I do believe his salary was partially funded from the capital budget. I'm not privy to the details of how and when and where that happened. That's all sort of done on the back end by Beth's predecessor.
Okay. All right, if we could get that, I just remember when Kevin Kerr was here, there was no second person. The second person, you, came with Tim, and the third person came with you. And so I just,
And some were capitalized and some
we're
weren't.
not. So if we could just, Beth, get just for my brain would help. Thank you.
A question to that?
Councilor McKay?
So that makes sense, but can we get, I mean, there's so many changes for all of us and we're all kind of maybe, used to a certain path and we'll all get to the end, I'm sure, but I think for my comfort level, all of the changes, I think I need to actually
Notes.
see them because I am a visual person and I like to have I take a lot of notes. But yeah, just to say what they actually are, and because if we ever get asked, it's nice to know what that is, to have that information. Because that's a lot of changes for us to just peel off the top of our heads for sure. So if we can have some of those details, that would be helpful for my brain anyway.
Absolutely.
There questions? Councillor Ingham?
No, I don't.
Yeah, you got the floor.
I got the floor. Yeah, just to follow up on that, I guess it would have been helpful for me to see version 2 of this budget, like when you go to version 1 to version 3, sort of where things are. And then also to follow up on Public Works. I do remember when Tim was hired, Alex was also hired, both engineers. And then when Tim left, Alex said, we don't need 2 engineers in this position because we're just going to trip over each other's feet. And so that's when we hired Jeremy under the operational, I would assume. And then you explained where Chris came in on that, right? Is that correct? I mean, so Jeremy would have been hired at a lower level than you as an engineer.
It's
correct?
just a coincidence that Jeremy was hired at that same time. Jeremy was hired to replace the lead hand 1 position, which was
okay,
taken
okay.
out of the union.
Okay, I
forgot
was
that.
thinking that he kind of, you didn't need to have, I remember you saying you didn't need to have 2 engineers doing a job. That's all I remember you saying.
Right.
Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay,
So I
that's
just wanted
good.
to know where it fit in. on
So
that.
Jeremy was not a new FTE.
Okay.
He was a replacement.
He was a
Okay,
replacement.
that's,
Okay,
Yes.
okay, that makes sense then.
we just didn't know that other person and we know you, you know, Jeremy. Okay, thank you.
This is simply a recap of the property assessment related to the revenues that the town generates. Residential highlighted is 587,302,000 dollars. When we talk about the revenues generated here from taxes, there's $1 million buffer for tax appeals for residential. So this 587 million is actually $586 million when we calculate the revenues that are associated with residential property valuations and residential tax revenues. When we look at commercial, the value for commercial is at the 487 million. This is something directly out of the version 1 presentation from the January CAL. I just wanted to reuse that slide. This is a similar slide. Overall, you'll see an increase in tax revenue year over year of 8.25%. This is with the inclusion of the tax rate reduction of 0.95% for both commercial and residential.
Councillor McKay?
Thank you. Can you flip back to that one for a second?
Sure.
So what was the rate? What is this year's current tax rate?
$1.475.
So that's the 0.095. Okay, I think it's because our package actually says residential, no change to rate. And then it says tax rate change. So that says tax rate assumption. Okay. Our package says something different than that. That's why it was confusing for me. Because residential, it says no change to rate. And then, and then it says tax rate change above it. So they're contradictory so that's why I was confused I wasn't sure what I was reading. You see that on our package?
What page is that?
Sorry, I don't know. Eight of the information report.
Page 2 of the.
Oh, I don't know. I can show it to you.
Sure.
Maybe I'm not on the right package again. So this one says residential, no, sorry. Flips. There we go. Residential, no change to rate, and then tax rate change. And that's in the information report.
Okay. That should have been taken out.
Okay, I think that's
Yeah.
all it is.
Yeah,
Okay,
that
just
was
a
typo.
typo.
Should have been taken
That's
out.
okay.
Draft.
Yeah. Perfect. Just wrapping my head around it.
This is
Okay.
the service exchange impacts. This again would have been a similar slide that you would have seen with Director McLean. Discussion, $82,000 that we are no longer paying this year for corrections services and $60,000 for regional housing. A total of $142,000. When you take out the reduction in the tax rate, it equates to roughly $60,000, which leaves the town with about $82,000 to then reinvest in new initiatives for 24-25. The municipal funding financial capacity grant, there's no change to the bottom component of that. This is the same presentation you would have seen from Director McLean. This next slide simply discusses the tax rate, which we've kind of thrown around. There's a 0.995 cents reduction in both residential and commercial. The proposed residential rate in this version is at $1.46.65 cents. And for commercial, it's $3.56.55. The cap limit, again, no change. Cap limit for 2024 is 3.2. The cost of living or consumer price index is at 4%. That's the actual amount. In version 1, it was at 4.2. So we've solidified that number. And then the change of a 1 cent tax change in both residential and commercial are on the bottom of this slide, showing for 1 cent in residential, it's 58,700. And for commercial, it's showing 4,300. So overall, a 1 cent change is $63,000. Should it be changed for both both property types. This again is a slide that's been reused from Director McLean. This was the no change. This was evidencing the cap of 3.2. If we don't change the tax rate, 70% of residents would see a 3.2% increase in their overall property taxes. This next slide has the 0.95 cent reduction. What that shows you is with the 3.2 cap and reducing the tax rate to 1.4655, most residents will see a 2.54 normalized reduction in their tax rate. Something that that Director McLean was very, very emphatic in expressing to me and to Jenny when we met with him a little over a week ago, was please keep the understanding that the taxpayer sees the service exchange. Even though the province is picking that up, it's still going to be a component of their tax. Okay. I wouldn't be doing him service if I didn't make that statement. The next one is simply a pie chart. Again, this is something that Director McLean liked to use, and it's showing basically what is going to happen to the majority of taxpayers should there be this proposed decrease in the tax rate. Roughly, with that decrease, 73% of properties will see an increase of 4% or less. And then you've got the various different pie segments. There'll be some that will see no change. There will some that will see a decrease. There will some that will see a decrease up to an increase up to 3.2. Some will see it from 3.2 to 4. Some will see it from 4 to 10, 10 to 20, 20 to 30. Similar breakdowns that you've seen before. Overall, a 4% increase per $100,000 equates to about $58 to $59 on your tax bill. And then depending on the assessment, it changes.
Beth, there's somewhere, and you might not know where it is either, but it's a provincial website that annually comes out with how we are doing relative to other municipalities, including with where our tax rate fits. Could I ask you, Mike will know where it is.
NCI?
That could be. That would be helpful for me, and maybe council would like to know where we sit in the scheme of other towns. I know that we're higher than a number of rural residents, but with respect to towns, that would be helpful to know. I don't know I think it's one of the things that we're a bit in the red. Yeah, residential impact, only because, well, sorts of reasons. Yeah, if we could get that would be helpful.
Absolutely.
I know it's somewhere on some website, and sometimes I can find it and sometimes I can't.
This slide similar resonates the same information on the previous pie chart, breaks it down in the various buckets, similar to how Director McLean had set it out. Overall, of the 1,655 residential accounts, an increase with this proposed tax rate decrease of 0.95 cents, 113 resident properties will see an increase greater than 30, 27 will see an increase between 20 to 30%, 131 will see an increase between 10 to 20%, 212 will see from the 4% CPI to 10%, 8 will see between 3.2 to 4%, and the majority of residents, which again dictates to that 70% plus, will see an increase below 3.2%.
Another question. I am assuming that taxpayers that see something like greater than 30 are largely people who have recently bought homes, and the
assessment,
might have been 280,000 and they sold it for 600,000. So that's the reason.
Yes. For the majority of them, that is the reason. For 80 of the 113 accounts, that's the reason.
What would be the other reasons?
Good question.
Renovations.
Renovations. Thank you. For commercial, similar kind of breakdown as far as the net change in the accounts and the increases between their tax payable year over year. 6 accounts will be greater than 20%, 10 between 10 to 20, 36 between 4.2 to, actually, that should be 4, not 4.2 to, that's a typo, to 10%. 23 from 0 to 4%, and 28 either with no change or decrease. This is a little bit of the conversation related to FTEs. From version 1 to version 3, there's no significant change aside from what's going to go into the Housing Accelerator Fund and what we've discussed recently in this meeting related to the project manager, which is being capitalized, and that will be reviewed in the capital. So you see small growth year over year. This is something that was presented in January COW. I'm not in love with the visual simply because it certainly seems to depict department over department. I prefer something of this nature and align it with the strategic goals of council and the town. So one of the questions as far as staffing levels and what's included and what wasn't included. In version 1, there was a slide deck related to what FTEs were not included. I've simply put this in just because for conversation purposes. In version 1, there was some conversation during the budget process of admin support for the office of the mayor. That's not been included in any versions. An FTE staff position in the office of the CAO, that has not been added. A 50% FTE staff position in IT. The staffing position hasn't been added, but there is a $50,000 contingency put in place as a result of both the cyber scope of work that has just been recently done with David and Grant Thornton, and some additional governance documents we want to ensure that we can put in place so that we have policies and procedures for IT. So we want to strengthen that department. And in order to do that, it's going to take some funding to do that. Whether it be long-term, the council decides that there may be a need for a change in staffing resourcing, and or if for the interim, we can do it simply by third party. Right now, it's in the budget based on a third-party contractor. Fair enough? The planning department, possible grant funding opportunity, we know that has come through. Devin will speak to that later on. It's not in the operating budget, but it will be in the final version of the operating budget or the next presentation. Staff resource towards economic development, that was discussed in V1, no change to V3. Staff resource towards social support coordination with the homeless, no change from V1 to V3. Items brought forward for one-time funding requests that have been put into the reserves that are not in the operating budget that I spoke to earlier related to the Curling Club, Randall House, and the Annapolis Valley Trails Coalition. Someone mentioned 5,000. The email that I'd received had between 5 to 10. Is 5,000 the correct amount?
TBD. We don't really know exactly, but there is an annual amount, I think that 2,500, but we can, Ian, you went to that meeting as
Yeah.
well, so we're
The meeting I attended, it was still up in the air, and it was 5 to 10, which the number we were juggling at that point.
So if we
that's-
use 10, we're safe. Okay. Trying to wrap this up within time, and if there's any additional thoughts or questions, I've made notes of things going forward in the next presentation. If we could also talk about potential dates for both the capital budget presentation, reserves, as well as finalizing the operating budget.
I have I guess a question, and it may be a request. I had a discussion, I'm not really at liberty to, because it's just somebody who works in another municipality and I'm not at liberty to share, but there was a comment that in this municipality, they had done for themselves a study of staff complement in various departments. This was a town, is a town. And the comment was made that in some areas we are under supplied in terms of staff complement in number of areas. I don't know if that's, I know that we have done a couple of times since I've been around this table, a salary review, but I don't know that we've ever done an FTE review. I'm wondering how hard that would be, if that's something that can be done through, you know, there aren't that many towns. I'm thinking Truro, Bridgewater, Yarmouth, Antigonish, Kemptville, just to get a sense of in our departments. I would find that interesting and helpful when we're, you know, dealing with some of these things that we come up with, but they don't move into the budget, to see if in fact we are understaffed in any area. You know, this is not, I'm not making a motion for staff to do that, but I found this conversation interesting, but I have no basis. It was their work, and so I don't have it.
So taking
Rob?
a similar municipality of similar size, population.
Yeah.
And budget.
How many staff do they have in public works? How many staff in recreation? How many in planning? How many in general admin? Just so that when we are being asked to add an FTE, at least we know that how we stack up. That I don't know if that's hard to get hold of or easy. Rob?
I thank your worship. I think if council had an appetite to undertake that at some juncture, you should probably do a service capacity review as well. Because looking at just in terms of looking strictly at the numbers and doing a quantitative exercise of how many staff is one consideration. But also if you look at the workload analysis in terms of some of the ambitious plans that council has, which directly impact staff. So you could, and again, there's merit to doing the numbers as well. But when you look at the aspirational goals of council and some of the things that you see unfolding in the years to come, it's all driven by your staff who are carrying the load to implement those considerations. So again, at some juncture, once you have the numbers, council may wish to do a service capacity review so as to get better understanding in terms of workload analysis and the things that staff are doing, so that it helps to better inform council's decisions on a go-forward basis, and something that I know I've done in my past career on a couple of occasions. It's been very helpful. So again, just a suggestion to run parallel with the doing that quantitative exercise as well. Thank you.
Yeah, and I don't know how to do what to do with that thought, but I think you make a good point that we may be the same size as another municipality, but we may be trying to punch way above our weight, and I'm sensitive to that with the employees that we have.
Not begging off your worship, but this would be a good placeholder for our new CAO.
Yeah, not.
For the service.
Absolutely. I just wonder how do we get it on our radar? Not necessarily for right now, but, or for this budget, but.
Yeah,
Councilor McKay?
Yeah, because typically at this time, and we've talked about it a few years in a row now, that we get an operations plan at the same time. So, because it's always hard to see what numbers are and then an ops plan and correlate that and the capital budget it's one package deal. So maybe we can say, put that in the ops, or put it, if it's not, put it in the ops plan, at least to consider for the next time round.
Do we need a motion for that? Not yet. Yeah.
Let's give it to the person.
Yeah. It's just so good. For the next, I see that, for the new CAO to do, it's too soon to do that motion?
I don't think.
Can staff just take direction to earmark it for the ops plan and see where it fits?
Absolutely, and I think that, you know, and not presupposing your discussions with whoever's going to be our new CAO, but that would be a conversation with that individual in terms of some of the expectations for he or she in their first number of months with our organization. So,
Okay,
yeah.
good. Councillor Ingham?
Yeah, I do think it's a good idea. I just want to be cognizant when you're looking at the different communities, towns, you know, that Antigonish would be top on the list for us to compare to. I mean, we do have Acadia that skews the demographics almost, well, not double, but we're looking at 3,800. And then so when you're looking at that, we need to take that into consideration too.
They're about to amalgamate, so.
No, okay, yeah, but what I'm saying is like, if we take the total population of Wolfville, including Acadia, there's variables there, right?
Yes.
And so we have to keep that in mind as a council when we're looking at that, moving, if you're gonna bring information back, that's all.
Apples and oranges.
Okay, we'll just put a pin in that and make sure we don't lose it in the transition that will come.
We'll definitely do that. To take into consideration, if I could just make a suggestion, oftentimes if you're doing it in private industry, you're gonna look at what initiatives you have, where your milestones are, what exactly the strategic plan is, and at what progress stage you are of completion. So to look at that just in and of itself, I believe you're gonna have to complement that with other analytics.
Yes, okay.
Makes sense?
And it may wait until the next election.
I'm just
Right, like,
thinking.
it's gonna be a whole other.
Good part for strategic
Yeah.
plan, but I think it's, I think every time a new employee ask comes up, I feel like I don't know where this fits in the broad scheme of things.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
So what's missing from the operating budget, the Housing Accelerator Fund? Devin's gonna speak to that shortly. The second to that is the new policing contract. There's a component of the policing, the RCMP contract that we have that is in the budget. We felt we were comfortable with it. There's a slight nuance to it that could add cost to our operating budget in the tune of around $80,000. So we need to solidify that. Rob's been working with another agency to come up with where that contract is going to lie, that agreement going to lie. I know Laura and I spoke to it this morning, and exactly the expected date of that is sometimes later in the month of March. So we'll be able to, hopefully in the next version, have those numbers solidified as well. Okay. Next steps to finalizing the operating budget. Obviously, there's some takeaways we have here that I will work on and the team will work on to bring back to council for further presentation. And I would suggest that we could do that at the same time that we review the capital budget, so that we're not encumbering council with an exorbitant amount of meetings. The next is the Housing Accelerator Fund, which I'm going to defer to Department Head Lake.
Okay, so this is just a year one estimate of the $1.8 million that we're receiving. And so some of this is an estimate because what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to balance the what we're going to eat with staffing and bureaucracy and administration versus the overall public benefit to the program. So you'll see that number. Really what I was trying to drive towards was a conservative number at the bottom of that slide that says balance to contribute to housing infrastructure. Okay, so if you go to the next slide, I'll come back to this, but I just want people to understand how this has gone out. So we've committed to certain actions, and a lot of those actions are to do with changing policies, doing work that staff is going to be doing over 3 years. But the balance of the fund can go towards community infrastructure. And so there's a long list. I think there's another slide here. Yeah, so there's quite a long list of things. I mean, I'm not going to read them all, but it's almost anything, right? It's a lot of things that are in our budget. And when we first started conceiving of this fund, and council will remember this, I brought you a significant budget that was going into 1 or 2 projects, right? And so if you go back to the budget now, what we're looking at this point is we've posted for a 3-year term planner position to essentially free up Lindsay to focus exclusively on the accelerator work. And so this is going to be something that Lindsay's managing, the procurement of the working groups, the policy changes with my support, obviously. But this other position will be doing a lot of somewhat what I do, but also what she spends a lot of time supporting me in, which is day-to-day planning applications. I mean, a lot of that work council wouldn't be involved in, to be honest. It's working with Marcia and setting things up, answering questions, administering the planning documents. So along with that is a bit of a salary top up for that position, coming with more responsibility, and that's really pursuant to the way we've looked at salary over time, and it's directly correlated to responsibility. Some of these other numbers are a little bit of, we're still refining some of these, but I just wanted to give you a sense of what we're moving towards. So there's consultant services, there's a procurement document that we're working on that'll come to council. There's some education and program launch activities. So that's really stuff that's happening between now and the election is what we thought. And a lot of that focus is there. The grant program is a specific action, and this is just for year one. The intent there is help organizations on the non-market housing side get more investment ready to provide housing. So some of that might be upfront diligence costs, just to get a project in any way planned, drawings produced. There's various budgets that are needed for that. So that's the intent of that program, and that's the number that may increase. So we're just given where we're at right now. Oh, I thought that was a reaction to what I just said. Yeah, and then there's the last line item is just sort of a miscellaneous piece. We are looking at building some project management capacity and doing a bit of training in the lead up to what I would say is the bulk of the launch coming with the new council, and really getting into the meat of the work after the summer. So that all nets out to a number. And to be honest, over this program, my goal is to make that number as large as possible. I think if it's $1.8 million, I'm hoping that there can be a significant contribution towards some type of community infrastructure, whether that's a street project. And I think once we get into the program more, this will probably be with the new council, I think there probably should be a bit of a strategic discussion over, do we want to target a specific project? And we're starting to develop a bit of a menu, whether that's parks, open space, sort of wellness stuff, or is that more hard infrastructure in Alex's realm in the capital budget? So there'll be some options brought forward, but I thought it was important to show sort of where we're at today. And this is evolving each day as we work on it.
Questions? Councilor McKay?
Thank you. So these numbers will be implemented into this because we have to recognize this revenue and these expenses. So these are going to be taken and put into this budget. And then the 1019 or whatever it ends up to be, as Director Lucas says, I mean, as it is now, it's going to be put into general revenue. So then to flip this into what we're going to do next time, if we're going to put it towards a project, we probably need to put it into a transfer to reserves into something else. Because I am concerned about our transfer to reserves outside of this one in general. If we keep adding things to our capital, it's actually a decrease from a transfer of reserves this year from operating to capital, and yet our capital asks went way off the chart. So I'd be interested to see when we come back, how those all balance out. And I know there's a investment plan for 10 years out, and what do those look like? But I'm worried about that 1019 being put into the abyss of just the general expenses day to day. If that made sense.
Absolutely, it does.
Deputy Mayor?
Just wondering, Devin, if the town is able through this program to look at things like tiny homes.
It will be part of the discussion. I mean, what do you mean specifically how they could be implemented on certain sites?
well, not only the mechanism, but can the town invest?
It's something we can look at, and part of where I'm saying it's a strategic discussion around that extra money. Direct investment in some type of housing could be on the table as well. And what I didn't say, I just want to make sure I'm really clear on this. What I was trying to do in creating this budget is to put some bumpers around what Lindsay is thinking about as far as scope and scale for some of these initiatives. So I'm kind of giving upper limits here so that we know that we have that amount to go towards community infrastructure. And I feel like those numbers are very safe at this point. And as I say, I'm hoping that as we move through the program, we'll have more money for that, for initiatives like that, I do think are part of a discussion, because there's a lot of things that we could consider funding as part of the money that we'll have from this.
Thank you. Councillor Madeira Voss?
I just would like to clarify the question that Deputy Mayor Elliott asked about tiny homes. Is this with a view that the town would actually own them and become a landlord? Is it a view that we would assist in the construction for a like what is the view
I
of the
think,
tiny
I
home?
think the pattern has been a community group takes the lead on this kind of initiative. So it may not even be a group that exists now, but whether the town could fiscally contribute was my question. Yeah.
But I guess my question was, is it?
Put your mic on.
I guess I was, just wanted to clarify, is this town ownership or is it town grant to the construction to a small, like what?
We don't know yet.
Okay, all right.
So I just want to be really clear here that the line item that you see around grant program, that could go towards a nonprofit group who wants to execute tiny homes. The intent is certainly not for the town to do a project. It's to partner with people that are maybe lacking in capacity, particularly on the front end. And that's where our actual dollars to organizations will be funneled through. And there's a structure that we're going to present to council to make sure that that's being funneled responsibly and transparently to these groups.
So, thank you, that's helpful, but the intent is that it would be a grant to assist in something, but it is not to move the town into becoming landlords. That, I just wanted to clarify that.
Okay. Questions? I have spoken to Devin about this, and I have a bit of a concern in terms of the dollars that are there and whether they're enough. I know that there are a few groups in town who have some projects in mind and some opportunities. They're not, it's not the portal, it's not Open Arms, it's not groups that are already established and have their nonprofit designation. They may. I am really concerned about a group that has an idea, but how they navigate getting grants, just navigate the system. Is that something that Lindsay in her position would be able to help them? Do we have enough resources in that type of thing? Because there are a couple of them are quite viable, but I don't see anybody, I don't see a project manager in that group, in those groups right now.
Yes, so part of the idea is that Lindsay's role would be to help navigate these, but I think there is a ceiling to the level of navigation and capacity that she could add, given that we do have a responsibility to deliver the whole program over 3 years. So you could quickly almost become a full-time employee for a group.
Yeah, I guess I wonder if it's more important to help an organization get housing for 60 people up than it is for us to put that money into a road construction. That's basically my question.
I completely agree. And I think that's where we need to have that more strategic discussion. And I think until that time, I'm just sort of identifying an upper limit of funds that will be available at the will of council to assign to projects as we move forward.
Okay, and there's no motions or that's information, and Beth, are you done with your part, or?
The last part is simply putting up the municipal policing agreement, which is currently in the budget. Rob's emailing me as this meeting's in progress.
Okay.
So
Hot off
there
the press.
there will be changes to that, but just to give you a bird's eye view of what's currently included in the budget. There's a new, if you notice, we've highlighted line F, public service employee. That component wasn't in the original estimate. And this is the unknown that we're trying to navigate around and determine exactly what is that hard and fast number going to be? What is the estimate cost drivers for us? So that we at least have a clearer picture of what that new contract's going to mean for us next year and moving forward into the next year 2, year 3, and year 4.
Deputy Mayor and
Back up.
then Deputy Mayor and then Councillor Palmer.
Okay, so public service employee, is that the person at the desk or is that the community safety office staffer that we've been led to think is coming down the tubes too?
Good question. The administrative component, there's another $50,000 that we do have inclusive in the budget for an administrative individual. This is a shared service expense more than it is an administrative expense, is my understanding. And that would equate to the costs of actually having the policing authority in place. And some could be additional admin costs, some could be related to overtime, some could be related to other related shared services. Rob, am I speaking out of turn?
So, thank you, Your Worship. Yeah, that the public service employee is with the transition to the MPSA, we will be then paying for that civilian position that currently serves there. It's not what was referred to by Deputy Elliott. And so that is being built into the total amount, as well as there's sometimes the terminology sounds eerily familiar, but the shared services piece to this is that from my previous life, I recall, in terms of for every officer in the province, there's an allocation for shared services for a variety of those that are provided by each division. In our recent discussions, I had indicated to Beth I needed to have more information on this. I communicated with the Department of Justice, and literally just as this tabled, I received the response today, providing that to Beth, and so we'll go back and revisit those numbers to bring back to council. So. And part of, if you will, with both Beth and myself coming in after the fact, so I've reached out to our former CAO. I know that Beth has spoken to our former Director of Finance. We're turning our mind to understand where we were with the PPSA into the MPSA and understanding in terms of the nuances of that relative to budget process.
So it is not the community safety.
No, it's not, Your Worship, no.
Good.
Well, I'm not good if we bring in a report that calls for a new staff person and it's not anywhere in the budget process.
Barb, did you want to speak to that?
Through Mayor Donovan to Deputy Mayor Elliott, in response to your inquiry about the potential for a community safety officer position. After the feedback from Councillor McKay in a previous meeting, we have moved the presentation from Dr. Schneider to April Cow. I believe, if our clerk can confirm that, I think that's where we landed. With the intent to give council more time to receive that presentation, reflecting a significant amount of work that Dr. Schneider has done. At this point in time, and again, in brief conversation with our partners at Acadia who have co-funded this work, there is no reason to believe that we would be asking for a funded position at this time. We understand that the recommendations that Dr. Schneider is making will be rolled out over a lengthy period of time, if at all. That would be really up for council to decide. And if those, if there are pieces of the recommendation and pieces of his work that do need to be applied immediately. We are confident that within the town, but specifically within the compliance department, so looking at Caden and Marin, we have some capacity there to kind of shift the roles that they are in and shift the type of work that they're doing. So we're confident we will not be going back to council in the near future with any ask for additional resources. And Acadia seems to be in the same position. That might come in a year, might come in 2 years, but not immediately.
Thank you. Councillor Palmer, your light was on and it's not, you're good. Any questions? Just Councillor McKay.
Because my understanding of that position from going from a PPSA to an MPSA was, sorry, from a,
Other way.
yeah, the other way around. We're going to the municipal plant, whatever, policing. That was an agreement. We said we would take on that employee as a full-time employee in-house after an individual retired, if I'm correct. Is that right? Okay, so that will be another full-time employee within our organization this year? Not this year?
Through the chair to council, my understanding is that the incumbent will be retiring next year. And so at that time, staff will then be providing an overview in terms of what the anticipated cost would be.
Other questions of staff? Thank you, Beth. Good job. You've had an interesting go in your first 14 days. You still like us?
Of course.
Not to put you on the spot.
Of course, of course. It's certainly a transition coming from, I appreciate everyone's patience. Big transition coming from private to municipal.
Yep.
To Councillor McKay's comments regarding operating reserves and it not being any operating budget. Reserves from my world, it's equity.
Yeah.
It's a different type of treatment. So I appreciate your patience. If there's ever any questions, by all means, please address them to me. I'm happy to have the conversation. I'm also very, very happy to be enlightened and educated and coached on anything that might be new or that might be something that could benefit my role and benefit my stewardship and council with the council and the assets of the town.
Just have a question. This is the Kings Point point. You did say that the addition had been incorporated in the operating budget?
It had. There was an additional ask of 6,300.
Yes, okay.
And that was actually part of the. Oops.
I just think the list will help us figure out, because we had a lot of moving pieces
Yeah.
between.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Councillor Butler?
Well, I only want a clarification about the ask, because the ask of the letter is 6817, but only 6,300 was built in. Okay.
So the initial version 1, there was
Mhm.
1,200. The ask was, we rounded it to 16,500.
Okay.
So we added simply the additional 300, and that's under partnership contributions.
Okay, and it is only a one-time, it's not an annual increase of 16,000, or it's only our initial contribution. This is just a one-time additional 6817. Whatever. It's only for the upcoming budget. Okay, just wanted to make sure that was clarified if anyone had need.
When we're creating the operating budget, we're only looking at that 1-year snapshot.
Okay. That's okay.
But do we not have to, I mean, it's in the budget, but that's a council decision, should we want to do that or not? Right? So I guess if we say we approve the budget, yes, but we need to be clear, we're saying, yes, we are supporting KPPT.
So we will
Yes, we are.
get another version of the operating budget again. We're not done. So, okay, yes. So it would be helpful if maybe some of those approval points were asterisks or something, and when the agenda is done, have to have motions for those. Okay,
Thank you.
thank you. All
I
right.
think we've We have 9 minutes to spare.
Yeah.
Well done.
I was gonna get through the rest of this agenda and then I'm thinking, Laura, can you today send out a doodle poll? And try and everybody respond by the end of the day, if you could. To a doodle poll for the next meeting.
You're wrapped up in the CAO recruitment doodle polls as well, Laura, because we've just been presented with 4 additional CAO recruitment meetings, just so that they're not, all of council can't approve to be here for the CAO recruit or to a budget meeting.
Yeah, I
if
think this is
we've
gonna
already
happen
committed.
next week. And so
Okay.
there's none of those meetings happen next week, is there?
There
Is there
is.
one? All right, well, we could tell
Yeah.
Laura what one
Yeah.
not to.
I don't know, because that was my first feedback.
Okay.
Oh.
Well, thank you for that.
Okay.
We'll work around that and make sure that's not a date. And I think it's just like an hour. Yeah. Okay, well, maybe we can, thank you for that.
I know,
All right, in the interest of time, committee reports, Councillor McKay, or Councillor Councillor Palmer, I'm not sure. Sounds like both of you attended the Trails Coalition report. Anything else to add?
We had 2 separate meetings
Oh.
and I was at WBDC, so Councillor Palmer went in there, but no, just to say that everything's in there and there is a subcommittee being formed to see if we can't find a way forward for that community group to figure out its longevity.
Any questions of Councillor McKay or Palmer? Also Councillor McKay, the WBDC, anything to add in your report?
As submitted.
Any questions? A question, so the hammocks,
Yes.
these things are going up this month?
I think in the 1st of March, it will depend on when.
We are
the
in
peop-
March now.
It is March, but it will depend on the ground. Like, cause if they need to
Okay,
put, lay down things and so they
Oh,
don't pick
yeah.
up all the
Better not
grass.
do it
and put
this
all the
week.
digs. Yeah, so it will depend on the contractor. They were away and then timing of when they can get the stuff in the ground.
Okay. The IMSA, Councillor you attended on my behalf.
Yeah, as submitted.
Thank you. I will mention and I will ask, there may be particularly Director Lake and maybe Barb Shaw, certainly any other staff or any other members of council. I will ask them to share a link. It's my understanding, it needs to be confirmed, that the WSP report on King's Transit and the routes, as well as the Joint Regional Transit Authority, are both presenting on, I think it's Wednesday, March 21st, to the board, and that will be an interesting to know what the early plans, recommendations anyways, are for regional and beyond regional transit. So I will check with staff there to see if we can send out a link, because it may be of interest to others other than the board. And any other questions for Councillor McKay or myself on that? I'm not seeing anybody for public input. We don't have an in-camera. We will not have a special counsel because we didn't deal with that item. I think that was all that was on there, Rob, was the roof. Laura is going to send out a doodle poll today so we can get another meeting for to wrap up operating and also to deal with capital and timer. So, and as I say, I would like to have a meeting, brief meeting with council and Barb and Rob after this. It will be out of, it will not be an in-camera meeting to update you on some item. So if I could have a motion to adjourn, please. Councillor Isabel